Well, I actually think that those two quotes of Warren's dismissing gold and Bitcoin are old. I think this most recent quote and the timing of it is fascinating because obviously Warren's a great investor. And what we're living through, in my opinion, is the unwind from the economic alignment put in place after the world wars. This is a dollar world reserve currency world where the US structurally operates in a deficit. Countries like China operate in a surplus, and we're reordering capital flows. And the US and China are trying to come to a new economic alignment. And in the process of that, markets like the bond market have been getting crushed. And I think Warren owns over, is it $300 billion worth of treasuries? And so he's one of the largest holders of the US debt in the marketplace. And so for him to have that self-admission, seeing the bond market getting crushed and questioning the reordering of capital alignment and capital flows globally says to me the macro environment that we're in for him to even make that acknowledgement. And I'd be curious, the two most fixed supply credible assets in the world, gold and Bitcoin, if he has a change in tune, because those quotes to me are old. And I also consider him a great investor, but an older investor, again, in a fiat world that lived through this world reserve currency era where, I'd be curious his opinion again. I don't want to go at Mr. Buffett. We saw Bessent and financial leaders come out and say, we will print the money. We're going to print the money. And I think Bitcoin reacted the most to that because it's the most sensitive. So I think in a world of uncertainty, what monetary regime are we entering now? Because it seems like the old one is dead. Bitcoin is most sensitive and most reactory to these fiat liquidity changes. And that's what I think was the 30% upswing recently is financial authorities coming out and saying, we recognize the volatility, we recognize the chaos, we recognize the underperformance in what was supposed to be a safe haven. We're going to come print the money. We're going to come to value the dollar and support markets. And Bitcoin ran from there.
Yeah. Speaking of printing money, the Fed, a lot of people are watching them right now. Obviously, we have upcoming meeting now signaling at least 2 potential rate cuts this year. Would that be a bullish signal for Bitcoin, or could it be a warning that growth is weakening?
I don't think the Fed matters as much as people give them credit anymore. Yeah. I think it's all about the Treasury. It's all about the Treasury. It's all about Scott Bessent. I think for people to understand the macro environment we're in today, we do have to go all the way back to World War II, manufacturing base at the time. And so what they did is they exported their strength by taking on the world reserve currency status. What they told the world is, listen, let's make the dollar the world reserve currency. We got the most gold. We have the strongest economy. We'll export our strength to you through the dollar. You all produce stuff. So Russia, you're the best natural commodities producer. China, you're going to build on top of manufacturing. Germany and Japan, you're going to see lots of growth. So the US structurally operated in a deficit. We didn't produce. We let everyone else produce. We exported the dollar. We imported goods and debt, right? So we imported food, energy, oil, manufactured good, cars, and we exported the dollar. Now, that's not a very sustainable practice, printing pieces of paper for real stuff. That was a reaction to a world war. But like any other empire, in my opinion, the US has gotten greedy. Those deficits have compounded over decades, over decades, over decades. The debt has compounded over decades, over decades, over decades. Now you live in a world where China is operating in a $1 trillion+ annual surplus with trade. Put it, where's an asset that is physically protective, that can't be inflated, that can't be controlled? Gold and Bitcoin. So you're seeing capital flows being reorganized, being reordered. The US saying, we don't want to be the world reserve currency anymore. It puts us structurally in a deficit. And the last thing I'll say is on the US's structurally short bond volatility, who in their right mind, Jeremy, would lend money to someone who can't control how they spend and is already in $36 trillion worth of debt? That's the United States. They run an unprofitable business, so they can't sustain themselves. They need a lender to finance their ability to survive. Who in their right mind is lending? And guess what? It's not China anymore. It's not Russia anymore. It's none of our global trade partners. It's hedge funds in the Cayman Islands, and it's stable coins. If you look at the recent data, the biggest buyer of US debt has been the Cayman Islands, not because of the country, but it's because of hedge funds domiciled there. And so the reason the US can't afford volatility is volatility forces banks to have these hedge funds post more collateral for the basis trade they're doing on immense amount of leverage by our hedge funds. And what these hedge funds are doing is what's called a basis trade. And the way that this works is they're arbitraging US debt instruments, but they're doing it on an incredible amount of leverage. Imagine a hedge fund making just a millimeter worth of money, but if you can lever that times 1,000,000, you can actually make a lot of money. So leverage is the game. Leverage does not work in a very volatile market, because that person lending you the leverage is going to ask for more and more collateral. The hedge funds don't have the collateral. They close their positions. The bond market gets absolutely obliterated. That's what we saw post-Liberation Day. And so what Jamie Dimon, what Scott Bessent have been advocating for in the media is give this market more leverage. Something like the SLR, the supplemental leverage ratio, that was introduced after 2008, the great financial crisis, because what the new regulation said is banks can't just infinitely leverage their balance sheets to buy U.S. debt. You need to post some sense of equity, some sense of capital. It has to be expensive for you to lever yourself that much. It applied some physical constraints to the market so that it couldn't get so irrational, so increasingly abundant.
Yeah, interesting. And I mean, we got these reintroducing of the tariffs, the dollars pulled back, obviously Bitcoin continuing to do really well. I guess what you're saying is that we're seeing the early signs of Bitcoin as a macro hedge against U.S. fiscal policy.
Yes, 100%. I think Bitcoin, again, Bitcoin equals technology plus fiat liquidity. And that fiat liquidity part is so important. Who's the best expression of currency debasement? What instrument is going to react and punish more dollars printed? If this market is full of levered hedge funds and banks begging for leverage rule changes, and it's going to be more credit, more liquidity, more debasement, what do I want to own? And in my opinion, Bitcoin is the one that increasingly is checking that box. And by the way, gold failed us already. I mean, the biggest question for gold investors is this time different? Builders that founded, that are on the board, that are on the leadership team, that can actually extend the opportunity beyond just buying Bitcoin, building technology on top of this asset. We hadn't seen anybody do that yet. And so we're not a small cap business, a mid cap business that's pivoting from a failed operating company, pivoting to a new opportunity. We're not changing our name. We are founded and designed to be the winner of, we want to be the best way for capital markets to participate in Bitcoin. And so again, for a fixed income market where I think real yields are going to have to be negative, bond market's been getting obliterated, capital markets are desperately seeking returns in real terms. And Bitcoin's been a champion of that. And so if we can create the capital markets vehicle that has blue chip credibility, you've got a SoftBank, you've got a Tether, you've got a myself, we've got billions of dollars entering the market. We know exactly what we're doing, but startup upside. Folks that have already built high margin, high growth, high cash flow generating businesses in this space. We know where the opportunities are. We've done it before. We think that's what the capital markets was missing. Yeah. The market to judge us upon, both ourselves and our shareholders are going to be incredibly happy.
Right. Yeah. Let's stick on that theme, because I mean, you're launching with 42,000 Bitcoin, over $500 million in committed capital. That immediately puts you among the top, one of the top Bitcoin treasuries out there. Your goal isn't just to buy and hold, though. You've talked about launching Bitcoin native cash flow products. What's the first revenue generating product that you plan to roll out? What does that look like?
So in our business filing, which I encourage everyone to look at, this is all public documentation. We cited we're first going to roll out educational and content tools. This is even the stuff we're doing right now, Jeremy, which we really appreciate you having us on. And then we've referenced some markets that we're particularly interested in, which is lending, which is credit. I mean, a lot of the vision for the business is in a fixed supply asset class, there's only ever going to be 21 million. If you're one of the top balance sheets in the world with this asset class, it's really who you're going to call when you need Bitcoin, when you need help settling, when you need credit, when you need a loan. And we feel exceptionally capable that are effectively Bitcoin backed for some of these markets is really attractive. And the conversations we've had have been phenomenal. Even the 500 million plus of committed capital, that's a big number for a company that's coming to market. And we're coming to market with billions of dollars on the balance sheet. So, you know, we think we can solve a lot of problems for a market that is in desperate need for someone with solutions. Because if you're in fixed income, you know, bonds haven't been great. But maybe a Bitcoin backed bond of sort gives you a lot of real returns. And so some of the conversations I've had is, you know, is 60-40 the best strategy? What about 55-5-40? What about 60-35-5? And understanding, you know, Bitcoin Sharpe ratio is the best performant of anything you can hold, and in what size of your portfolio should it be, but it probably shouldn't be zero. And so anyways, we're looking at everything. We're going to copy a lot of what's worked for those that have helped build the industry. And then there's a lot new that we're excited to unveil. For those that are contributing to this space, even just from a psychological, philosophical standpoint, those that are allowed to contribute and get to know the industry, that's gone up tenfold from my vantage point.
What about some of the obstacles? I mean, obviously there's a big change on the bank front, but I mean, are there still some obstacles that remain in place here?
We don't believe so.
From a policy perspective, I guess, right?
I mean, not necessarily, in my opinion. And I don't, I get asked often, like, is this administration the deal breaker that's going to send Bitcoin to the moon? Yeah. Bitcoin to me is not a political trade. If Bitcoin traded based, if I needed Donald Trump to tweet something awesome for Bitcoin to be justified in my portfolio, I'd own none of it. Yeah. Bitcoin is an apolitical instrument. It's been successful no matter what party or who's been in office. And so I think we have what it takes to be successful, which is, in my opinion, the most perfect money in Africa. And that's what a business like Tether has achieved, to be totally candid with you. So I actually think, and listen, we have Tether integrated into our product at Strike in Africa, in Latin America, these emerging market products that we serve. And what we've seen is the product goes from they want to hold Naira in Bitcoin to they'd rather hold Tether in Bitcoin. So we find Tether actually competitive with the local currency that's a piece of crap in some of these emerging markets, as opposed to being competitive, with Bitcoin. So I actually don't think it matters that much. I don't know why US banks are super eager to try and put a stable coin in my Venmo account. The dollars in my Venmo account are fine. It doesn't matter. It's the person that has Naira and doesn't have digital access to the dollar. They're willing to ditch their Naira for the dollar as they ease into Bitcoin. That's been my personal experience, in my opinion. And for me, it doesn't matter much, to be candid. I'm focused on $400 to $500 trillion for humans. And I think over time, institutions and governments are going to appreciate and understand that and rightfully try and participate.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it is. I mean, the sovereigns, there's certainly a lot of talk about them getting involved. And there's also this chatter that the Trump administration is preparing an executive order to explore a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, how symbolic is this? Do you think it's the start of that serious institutional change that you're talking about here?
Yeah, well, going back to my macro thesis is that we had the post-World War II setup. U.S. is running this deficit. Everyone else is running a trade surplus. That's not sustainable. It's not going to work. It's destroyed the U.S. middle class. It's created this massive wealth gap, bigger than anything we've ever seen in history. And so I think that the Trump administration is trying to unwind that and trying to fix it, support the middle class again. They said Main Street, not Wall Street. One of the ways to do that is to prioritize gold, prioritize Bitcoin, weaken the dollar. And I think that that's what they're doing. Now, the question for the U.S. is, it's a bit of an awkward situation, is because you structurally run deficits, you don't have a surplus, you don't have profits. Like, if you think of the U.S. as a business, they're not a profitable business. Support Bitcoin. I mean, if you're the U.S., I mean, how much debt and money supply do you have is out there before you say, okay, all the dollars are actually backed by gold, are actually backed by Bitcoin. If you can get the Bitcoin and the gold price high enough, Trump can come out and say, all your dollars are actually backed by gold and Bitcoin again. Boom, we solved the problem, right? So I think, I think Trump and Bessent like to see higher gold prices. They like to see higher Bitcoin prices. They are trying to devalue the dollar. It's the only way out is by printing your way through and devaluing the debt.
All right, you're the CEO of two companies, my friend. I don't know how you did some days, but how do you manage your time between Strike and 21 Capital?
I think, this story is a little over exaggerated. These businesses do share in one mission, which is, Bitcoin. And so my time, it's effortless to manage my time. I mean, they are two separate companies. They work on two separate products, entirely separate entities. But I've spent my entire life working on Bitcoin. I don't know a life outside of that. And so it comes really naturally to me, to be totally honest. I do believe that Bitcoin is the best tool to affect positive change and move the world in what I hope is the right direction. And so it comes naturally to me. And the other thing I would tell the public is, you can just do things. I don't know who came up with the rule that you can't run two companies, but it's not true. And I'm proof of that. So
like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and enabling post notifications for more content on crypto and digital assets. Check out our other videos and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps with the YouTube algorithm and keeps the content coming. Thanks for your support. Enjoy the video.